Assalamu alaikum. Today in our lecture we will discuss the metabolism of individual amino acid, how they are going to form the specialized products which are important clinically. So in today's lecture we will start with the sulfur containing amino acid, that is methionine, cysteine and cysteine. We will discuss one by one all the different amino acids which have got a weightage according to your examination and which are important clinically. Now, specialized products are formed by the metabolism of different essential and non-essential amino acids. These products are clinically as well as biologically very important. So starting with the sulfur containing amino acids. Sulfur containing amino acids, these are methionine, cysteine and cysteine. Cysteine is nutritionally non-essential because our body can synthesize it from methionine. So methionine is absolute essential. Two amino acids of cysteine, they combine by disulfide bridge to form cysteine. So these amino acids, they are almost an exclusive dietary source of sulfur. Cysteine and cysteine are interconvertible. Now here you see the functions of methionine. You see it's a sulfur containing amino acid. Methionine is responsible for the translation of protein synthesis. Methionine has got an essential vital role for the initiation of protein synthesis. Protein synthesis starts with this methionine. Regarding methionine, it is responsible for transmethylation. Transmethylation means a transfer of methyl group from one compound to another. So methionine is a methyl donor. It gives methyl group to different compounds to form a very important compounds which are clinically like catecholamines. Methionine is going to, in its metabolism, it forms cystathionine. If you remember, homocysteine is converted into cystathionine. So after the cystathionine is produced in its metabolism, cystathionine, which is converted into alpha ketobutyrate, and we get cysteine. So cystathionine formation is another important function of methionine, plus polyamines. When methyl group is donated to another compounds, we get polyamines like catecholamines, epinephrine, norepinephrine. Methionine, in its metabolism, it gives cysteine at this step. When cystathionine is going to be converted into alpha ketobutyrate, we get cysteine. Now cysteine, another one common function of all the amino acids is that they are being incorporated for the translation of protein. So here you can see protein is a protein synthesis, the function of methionine. Protein function is the synthesis, the function of cysteine. Plus, as it is a glucogenic amino acid, we are getting glucose. Plus the functions of cysteine are formation of glutathione. We will discuss later how it is formed. Plus taurine, which is conjugated with the cholic acid, bile acids to form bile salts. Plus coenzyme A, plus cysteine. From cysteine we get active sulfate. Now two cysteine amino acids, they combine by bisulfide bridges to form cysteine. Now, function of cysteine is a common function for the synthesis of protein. Two cysteine amino acids, they combine to form cysteine. Now, this slide is showing how the metabolism of methionine, which is the essential amino acid, takes place in our body. We have already discussed its metabolism in detail, so here very quickly I will pass through the different steps. Methionine, after adenosine nucleic acid is combined with methionine, we get its active form of methionine. This is S-adenosyl methionine. SAM is the abbreviation for that. So S-adenosyl methionine, now it's ready to donate its methyl group. So the process is called transmethylation, because methyl group from this SAM active form of methionine is being transferred to another compounds, and the process is called transmethylation, and we get the different important clinically important compounds like catecholamines, like epinephrine, norepinephrine. So here simply remember that methyl donor is the active form of methionine, S-adenosyl methionine. So after donating its methyl group, it is converted into S-adenosyl homocysteine. S-adenosyl homocysteine, from this compound adenosine is removed. So after the removal of adenosine, the new compound we get is homocysteine. So the only difference in the structure of homocysteine and methionine is the presence of methyl group in methionine. So if we simply add methyl group to homocysteine, this will become methionine. Now, otherwise homocysteine in the metabolism of methionine, it is converted into cystathionine by the activity of cystathionine synthase enzyme, and vitamin B6 is required, and here at this step serine amino acid gets entered into the metabolism. After the entry of serine, we get cystathionine. Cystathionine is converted into alpha ketobutyrate and the release of cysteine, sulfur containing amino acid. So the formation of cystathionine in the metabolism of methionine is important, because cystathionine is going to be converted into alpha ketobutyrate and cysteine. Our body is getting this sulfur containing non-essential amino acid cysteine and alpha ketobutyrate. Finally, it is converted into succinyl CoA through propionyl CoA. Now, this homocysteine, as I told you, can be converted back into methionine if we are able to add this methyl group, and methyl group is donated by tetrahydrofolate. Tetrahydrofolate, in the presence of methyl transferase enzyme, tetrahydrofolate in the presence of B12 donates methyl group to homocysteine, which becomes methionine. So in case when the activity of this enzyme is blocked, homocysteine cannot be converted into cystathionine. This homocysteine can be reused, recycled for the synthesis of methionine, because the first important function of methionine, that is to donate the methyl group, should not be blocked at all. So this homocysteine, in the presence of this enzyme, in the presence of B12, is converted into methionine. So in another step, homocysteine is converted into cystathionine, and finally it is degraded into succinyl CoA, which enters the TCA cycle. This is the condition when this homocysteine, due to the low activity of this enzyme is not being converted into cystathionine, it will lead to excessive accumulation of homocysteine in the blood. Excessive accumulation of homocysteine in the blood, as it is water soluble, will lead to excessive excretion in the urine. The condition we call homocysteinuria, having these symptoms, signs clinically. So homocysteinuria is one important fate we come across regarding the abnormalities in the metabolism of methionine. Plus, this enzyme is very important because due to the activity of this enzyme, from cystathionine we are getting cysteine. So if this enzyme is deficient, what will happen? There will be excessive accumulation of cystathionine and there will be less availability of cysteine and this metabolic route. So what happens if this enzyme activity is blocked? Cystathionine concentration in the blood increases, and cystathionine, another name of cystathionine is L-captone. So it will lead to L-captonuria, another clinically important ailment which is related with the abnormal methionine metabolism. So if we summarize in one slide the overall clinical importance of methionine, starting from the first step, methionine is important for methyl donation. Methyl is important methyl donor. It is important for the clinical disease, homocysteinuria. The importance of this cystathionine synthase enzyme. Then another clinical importance of the enzyme is, at this stage, cystathionase, when it is deficient, there will be excessive accumulation of cystathionine, that will lead to L-captonuria. Now this slide shows how cysteine is metabolized in our body by different metabolic routes. Cysteine and cysteine, the formation, this is a reversible reaction. Cysteine can be converted back into cysteine by the activity of cysteine reductase. Cysteine is metabolized in our body through the three possible routes. One, to form pyruvate, second, to form coenzyme A, and third, to form cysteine sulfonate. By the different processes, when it is acted upon by desulfhydrase, it is converted into pyruvate. This is one fate. Another fate by decarboxylase enzyme, when this enzyme acts on cysteine through the different steps, it is converted into coenzyme A, and vitamin B5 is acting as a coenzyme here. So another route is in the formation of coenzyme A. The third route is by the oxidation of cysteine. Cysteine is oxidized into cysteine sulfonate. Cysteine sulfonate, this has another two fates. Either it is oxidized to form cystic acid, or it is desulfonated with the release of alanine by desulfonase enzyme to be converted into sulfite. So cysteine sulfonate has two fates. Either by oxidation it forms cystic acid, or with the desulfonase, with the release of alanine, it forms sulfite. Sulfite is converted into sulfate to be excreted in urine. This is the ultimate fate of this route. Now this cystic acid is converted into two compounds, taurine and pyruvate. Pyruvate, that is why cysteine is a a glucogenic amino acid. So pyruvate is ultimately through gluconeogenesis can be converted into glucose. Plus the cystic acid can be converted into taurine. Taurine, when it combines with cholic acid, that is bile acid, it is conjugated with cholic acid to be converted into bile salt for the digestion of fats, taurocolate. So this is one pathway of cysteine sulfonate. By decarboxylation we are getting coenzyme A, and we are getting pyruvate directly by desulfhydrase. The whole fate of a sulfur containing nutritionally non-essential amino acid, cysteine. Now cysteine is also one of the component of glutathione, which is if you remember, antioxidant. It is antioxidant. In glutathione, it is synthesized by two steps. In the first step, glutamate, you add cysteine, and glutamate, you get glutamyl cysteine. Glutamyl cysteine, with the incorporation of glycine, we get glutathione antioxidant. And now we discuss how the glycine is metabolized in our body and what are the important compounds we are getting from glycine in its metabolism. Glycine, which is abbreviated by three alphabet GLY, or by a single alphabet by capital G. It is the simplest, smallest, and nutritionally non-essential and glycogenic amino acid. Glycine is the most abundant amino acid normally excreted in urine. Glycine is actively involved in the synthesis of many specialized products like purines and creatine. You can see the diversity of functions performed by glycine. Common function, as it is with all the amino acids, that is the synthesis of protein. Glycine is involved for the supply of amino group. Glycine can be converted into glucose, that is why it is a glucogenic amino acid. In its metabolism, it is going to form formate, oxalate, we will discuss later in the slide, and glycine is being used for the conjugation of the different substances. Creatine formation, creatine, which is a protein of the muscles, and in the muscles creatine is being stored in the form of creatine phosphate, high energy compound. Glycine is required for the synthesis of purines. Glycine is required for the synthesis of heme. It is required for the synthesis of antioxidant, glutathione, and from glycine we can get serine. So these are all the multiple functions of glycine. Glycine is one of the most abundant amino acids found in the protein structure. Collagen contains very high content of glycine, 30%. Every third amino acid is glycine. Glycine is seen where the polypeptide chain turns or bends. Normally excreted in urine, it is synthesized from serine and threonine. You can see in this slide that glycine can be synthesized in our body by different routes. First, serine. From serine, this is a reversible reaction by the activity of hydroxymethyl transferase. Glycine can be converted to serine, and serine can be converted into glycine. And this glycine can also be synthesized from threonine by the activity of aldolase enzyme. This
synthesis of glycine, this reaction is irreversible. So the main two routes are from serine, which is reversible, and from threonine, which is irreversible. You see here that glycine, the major portion of the glycine, major part is oxidatively deaminated to form this CO2, ammonia, and N5 and 10 methylene tetrahydrofolate. This is a reversible reaction. This is reversible reaction, and our body can synthesize glycine from all these components back. From serine through ethanolamine, through glycocolate, it is converted into glyoxylate. So glyoxylate, the fate of glyoxylate I tell you later. Glyoxylate can also be synthesized from glycine by the activity of oxidase enzyme. So this conversion of glycine to glyoxylate, it is one way, and when glyoxylate is being acted upon by transaminase enzyme, glyoxylate can be converted back into glycine. So this is another route for the synthesis of glycine, that we are getting glyoxylate from the metabolism of the serine, and ultimately this glyoxylate can be converted back to the glycine. This has got a clinical importance. I will tell you later what happens when this enzyme is absent genetically, or there is a low activity of this enzyme. As far as the fate of glyoxylate is concerned, glyoxylate is converted into either oxalate or formate. Formate is a one carbon containing compound, carbon donor compound. It donates it methyl group to tetrahydrofolate, and tetrahydrofolate itself, it becomes N10-formyl tetrahydrofolate. So this is a whole story for the metabolism of glycine. Now, synthesis of specialized products by glycine. You see, a creatine formation or creatine synthesis, we require for the synthesis of creatinine glycine, arginine, and S-adenosyl methionine. S-adenosyl methionine, as I told you, this is the active form of methionine to donate its methyl group. So these three amino acids, arginine, glycine, and methionine, they participate to synthesize creatine in our body. You can remember the names of these three amino acids by the name of a magazine, which is MAG, M-A-G, MAG. So you can relate the alphabets of MAG magazine with this methionine, M for methionine, A for arginine, and G for glycine. So in the very first step, what happens in the kidney? Glycine and arginine is incorporated in its metabolism to form guanidoacetate. This reaction is taking place in kidney. Now, guanidoacetate in the liver, it receives the methyl group from S-adenosyl methionine, and S-adenosyl methionine itself is converted into S-adenosyl homocysteine. We discussed in detail in the metabolism of this methionine. So, after having the methyl group guanidoacetate is converted into creatine, and this reaction takes place in liver. Now creatine is ultimately, it is stored in the muscles when it is energized by getting phosphate from the ATP. So creatine in the muscle, it is stored in the form of creatine phosphate. Creatine phosphate is a high energy compound. Now from here, creatine phosphate, when phosphate it is dephosphorylated, or under all circumstances, creatine, from the creatine, if you remove water, and it happens in a normal physiological conditions, water is removed in small quantities of creatine, and this useful compound, it is converted into its dehydrated form, that is creatinine. Creatinine is a waste, and it has got another very important clinical repercussions regarding the functions of the kidney. We will discuss in other platform. So creatine has got two fate. Under physiological conditions, this creatine is dehydrated and it assumes the ring-like structure. Ring-like structure is present in creatinine, so it is a waste. Similarly, some quantities of creatine phosphate undergoes dephosphorylation and it is converted into creatinine. So this is another very important role of glycine in the formation of this high energy compound in the muscle, creatine phosphate. Now heme synthesis, another very important function of the glycine. You remember I delivered lectures in your first year regarding heme synthesis. The very first step in the synthesis of heme is glycine, the 2-carbon compound, when it combines with succinyl-CoA, 4-carbon compound, in the presence of this rate limiting enzyme ALA synthase, alpha amino levulinic acid. This is amino levulinic acid synthase. So in the presence of this enzyme, rate limiting enzyme, glycine and succinyl-CoA, they combine and they form a delta amino levulinic acid. The very first step in mitochondria, it is taking place, and the credit goes to glycine to initiate the process of heme synthesis. Now glutathione, which is antioxidant, it is an example of tripeptidation. 3 amino acids, they incorporate to form glutathione. In the very first step, glutamate and cysteine, in the presence of synthetase enzyme, glutamyl cysteine synthetase, ATP will definitely be used, and it is converted into gamma glutamyl cysteine. Gamma glutamyl cysteine is converted into glutathione, and again it is an energy consuming step. Glycine is incorporated into glutamyl cysteine, and we get this antioxidant glutathione. In both the steps, ATP is used. It is clear. Now glycine plays another very important role for the synthesis of purine. Entire molecule of glycine, this is the structure of glycine, having 2 carbons only. Entire molecule of glycine is utilized in the formation of purine ring at the position 4, 5, 7. You can see here 4, 5, 7. The members of the purine ring, they are all contributed by this glycine. Now conjugation reactions. Two important conjugation reactions. Conjugation of bile salts, that is cholic acid and chenodeoxycholic acids, which are bile acids. They conjugate with glycine and they form their respective conjugates like glycocholic acid and chenodeoxycholic acid. So bile salts which are used for the digestion of fats. Another function, detoxification of benzoic acid. Benzoic acid is used in different industries for the as a preservative. Plus benzoic acid is also present in certain plants. So benzoic acid is detoxified by its conjugation with glycine and it is converted into hippuric acid. So hippuric acid formation is a good index to assess the function of the liver. The glycine can also be used in our body for the detoxification of certain drugs. Glycine, after conjugation with certain toxic drugs, it make them water soluble and those are excreted in urine. Now metabolic disorders of the glycine. Glycinuria, excessive excretion of glycine in the urine. That is only possible when excessive excretion of glycine in the urine due to decreased or defective reabsorption leading to increased incidence of oxalate stone formation in the urinary tract. Surprisingly, in this case, because excessive glycine, when it is excreted in urine, is converted into oxalate stone, it stays in the urinary tract. However, the urinary oxalate level is normal in these patients. This is glycinuria, excessive excretion of glycine in the urine with the formation of oxalate stone in the urinary tract. Now another metabolic disorders related with the glycine, that is primary hyperoxaluria. I show you in my the slide of glycine metabolism that glycine is reversibly converted into glyoxylate. By the activity of oxidase, glycine is converted into glyoxylate, and by the activity of another enzyme, transaminase, in the presence of pyridoxal phosphate vitamin B6, glyoxylate can be converted back into glycine. And this glyoxylate we are getting from two routes, that is from glycine, plus we are getting glyoxylate through, if you remember, through the metabolism of serine. Metabolism of serine leads to the formation of glycocolate, and glycocolate is ultimately converted into glyoxylate. So in primary hyperoxaluria, what happens that this enzyme which is going to convert glyoxylate into glycine, that is absent. So what will happen? There will be excessive pooling of glyoxylate in our body because it is not being converted back into glycine. So if there is excessive accumulation of glyoxylate, it will lead to serious consequences when this enzyme which is going to convert glyoxylate to formate one carbon pool which is going to donate its carbon in the form of methyl to tetrahydrofolate. So when this enzyme is absent, glyoxylate is not going to be converted into glycine, and when in the presence of this deficiency, this oxidase enzyme is also absent or decreased activity, what will happen? Glyoxylate preferentially will be converted into oxalate. So excessive amount of glyoxylate will be converted into oxalate, and excessive oxalate formation will lead to, when it is excreted in the urine, there will be a great tendency to form renal stones, and the process is called oxalosis. So oxalosis, when there is excessive oxalate formation due to the deficiency of glycine transaminase with addition of dioxalate oxidase enzyme. So excessive oxalate excretion in the urinary tract will lead to a renal stone formation. Plus, we are not getting a one carbon pool in the form of formate. So the supply of this one carbon compound will be stopped to the tetrahydrofolate. Thank you very much. I'll see you in my next lecture. Stay safe, stay blessed.